everyone, and welcome to the CoStar News Hotels podcast. I am news editor Sean McCracken here, as I am every month, for our overview of the Asia-Pacific region with STR's Jesper Palmqvist. Jesper, how are you doing today?
Very good and thundery and lightning-prone Singapore.
Yeah, nearly, just before our recording, nearly struck down by lightning, mere meters away from him, apparently.
Yeah, let's go dramatic on it. It was a big one. It was right here. But that is life on the equator, man.
So, other than the kind of scary weather, how is life in Singapore, and how is hotel performance across the region?
Yeah, well, it's a good time of year for Singapore. We have the Singapore Hotel Association annual general meeting now in this week, first week of June. So that's exciting. Everyone gets together and we talk forecasts around the market. And if we look in the last couple of months a bit wider, it's still year to date still says a lot about increasing rates. Like if you compare that to other parts of the world, and the top 15 countries in APAC all grew rate, and Thailand pretty much flat, but then you have an average around 6%. So hotel rates growing across the region, and that's year to date. And if you think that's changed in the last few months, so recently it is predominantly rate that the only one really moving up more recently would be small isolated, like say French Polynesia, more Americans going there. But so I suppose the Vietnam and Vietnam is the leader, the driver in this, right? And this shifted from last year and Japan. So the question was more who's the downer and laggard in this. And you can look at Maldives. It looks almost flat year to date when you look at it, but April, no surprise, we talked about this. Occupancy dropped about 24%. So that's a direct impact from Middle East. So rates hold up okay. Remember, this is mostly high end, so holds up pretty okay. Its only downside's a big drop from the war. And if you move, the only thing that saves Maldives right now, I'd say, is since May is closed, as we move, that's the low season coming up in the Maldives.
Yeah.
And that percentage gap narrows. The normal occupancy is going to, in mid-May, drops to 50% and lower. So I think they're saying, no, low season can't come soon enough, which said no one ever until now. But from a comps and a budget perspective, that's exactly right. So it's really one big month for a market like Maldives with that sensitivity where they get hit. And then the low season, and if that trouble can end, they can come out of it okay, which I think is interesting. How it's a story of how timing impacts a lot of these markets, crisis wise, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're saying has been the refrain for global hoteliers for a couple months now, is just the sooner this can end, the better for all of us, right?
Oh, for sure. Listen, the timing, and you look at a market like Phuket, who is obviously, with its maturity, April is down, minus 12 and occupancy in 4. It's both about that flight connections and that indirect effect from the war, right? So and that'll happen in some of these markets depending on your source markets. And some we say no, it's a safe haven, less impacted. But if it goes on for too long, you can't hide, right? And I saw Philippines, for instance, doing a bit better, but that's low comps from last year as well. But yeah, so it's all right. I'm a little bit more interested in Indonesia. We spent some time there recently.
I was going to mention you guys had some moving and shaking in Indonesia.
Yeah, and particularly because we created a new event. Like CoStar was a part of this a new event called Indonesia Tourism Exchange, ITX, together with Bill there at C9 and Matt and at Horwath and others. So a great new event. It's kind of reaching hotels that normally don't. And Jakarta in Indonesia is such a vibrant market. We made sure to get this format a little bit different. When you think about events, very often it can be long, 9 people on stage and 1-hour panels. So the success of Thailand Tourism Forum was translated into this, where you have short sessions. It's about 10 minutes, quick conversations with local people, with Indonesians on stage about what mattered to them. And that resonated. And it's only 2 hours and it's free. for attendees. So we talked about how this crazy bifurcation rates have kept growing for such a long time, and occupancy is under pressure. And it started, of course, with the occupancy government policy. We talked about that before, spend less. But that is just in some markets. You're seeing actually occupancy pressure. And it's true, you have domestic flight price and things. Indonesia is such a big market with
Hmm.
such a strong domestic engine. And people think Bali, but that is in isolation before they can get more flights coming. So it's definitely interesting. It's particularly from luxury. We spent more time talking about luxury and the opportunity. It's still an affordable market. They generally on luxury recently about 50% below Thai luxury in terms of ADR when you compare it. And there's great luxury there. Luxury is always such a resilient segment also in Indonesia. So it's a good opportunity. And I think a lot of developers are seeing that. They're trying to put more high-end hotels, not just in Bali and villas, but you can see some of the new luxury things happening in Jakarta as well. And this rate growth have given them and others how much higher profits. Owners get happy. I think this though is the year where that starts abating, right? So there's only for so long you can do it. But the Indonesian spirit in terms of entrepreneurship and development is quite something to behold.
Mhm. I will say to your earlier comments about formats for these events, I do appreciate when things are a little more streamlined and tighter as well. It's always noticeable, especially when you go to different global regions, like the cultural differences and how people kind of run their shows and how tight or not tight they are. I do appreciate a well-run, compact
Yeah.
agenda.
Yeah, and one of the ways we like to do it is we have a big squeaky rubber chicken on some of these events. When someone is going over time by 1 second, that
Mhm.
will not stop. And
Oh,
we will
well,
squeeze that rubber chicken, and that's pretty embarrassing if you reach that stage. But
I will
no,
say that needs to become a thing at, Latin American hotel conferences, which have a
yep.
tendency to go about 2 hours over their scheduled allotted time.
I think we have a lot in common there in some of the Southeast Asian event with Latin America for sure. With how you can have a lot of people on stage, and the cultural thing is also the long introductions and that. But that's a little bit, I'm being slightly unfair because it has changed, and we wanted to be part of that change, and especially since it's the second and third generation of hotel owners in a lot of these markets that now come up. They have no interest in that. They want to
Yeah.
let's have a quick conversation about what we can do, and the topics are different. So Indonesia is a perfect place for it. It's a lot of opportunity for sure.
In some ways, our collectively shortening attention spans are a good thing. It's the takeaway.
That is correct.
So, obviously, right before this call, we were talking about a little bit about Japan, and kind of the interesting dynamics playing out there. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we just had another news flash on that because when the Chinese stop traveling, it has not stopped, but it 50% down, right? It people say, "Oh, what's going to happen now?" But Japan has reached this quite new type of equilibrium, and we used to say, coming out of the pandemic, you had these like you grow domestic first, and then the big three, etc., and maybe Hokkaido on that. What's happening now? If you look at the last couple of months, Osaka down year over year, right? Fine. The comps is one thing because you had Expo launch last year, which initially gives a big thing, but also that's a market that is dependent on Chinese traditionally more than, say, Kyoto and Tokyo. So Osaka and along the Western Japanese cities as well, in the smaller markets where Chinese travelers will go, they're down. But then in Tokyo, you had record ADR, so record all-time ADRs, because when that Chinese actually the Westerners come in as well. Like yes, it's the Sakura period, right? So you have the cherry blossoms, and the Americans and other Westerners they stay in higher-end hotels, and then there's only so many of them, and that pushes the rates up. So right now we're seeing this growth is benefiting some, and it's benefiting the same kind of hotels and owners that we saw previously. It's the high-end hotels, and the Chinese tend to have a shorter length of stay because it's a shorter trip. It's a short haul flight, kind of. For us, it's a short haul flight with 5 hours. So they would, have a short flight, come over and stay more in the mid scale place as well. So when I read about U.S. dynamics and the arrivals into U.S., it feels like all the Americans, well, still going to Japan, and everyone's
Mhm.
going to Japan still,
Yeah.
apart now from the Chinese. And it's an interesting shift around the country in there.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, last month we spent a fair bit of time talking about how we were kind of amazed with the resilience of that country, but, it is interesting to think that, a shift in demand, feeder markets also will filter down to who's going where. I will say, looking through headlines right before this, I did come across one that I wasn't planning on talking about, but it is funny to me now since we're talking about Americans going to Japan, that apparently there was a Trip.com study about how one of the major drivers from, America to Asia for travel now is, they're calling it anime travel. Like, that's what sparks interests for Americans to go to Japan, which, sure, why
Not
not?
Yeah, not a joke. Like, yeah, you can always say any kind of niche. Like, how big is it really, or is it just a headline? Any cultural event that comes out of Japan or Korea. I mean, hey, look at recent music awards. What did
Yeah, for
K-pop win?
sure.
Pretty well. Like, K-pop has been a big thing, and before that it was J-pop, and then anime is a massive industry.
It
People wanna go
is.
see the originals, and kids drag their parents, and adults wanna see it. So, yeah, for sure.
I mean, you can joke about it, but, like, at the same time, when you think about, well, what drove the US as this major international destination for such a long time, and really it's pop culture and cultural awareness, right? Like, you grow up anywhere in the world and you're aware of any number of quintessentially American things because of television and movies, and this is literally the same thing, like, music and animation, whatever, like, is coming from Japan, Korea, and it's driving interest there. Like, it's pretty one to one, right?
It is pop culture, and any kind of arts will drive it. So, and Japan and Korea they have this, and I think that's one thing that I look at. How what does Southeast Asia? Will they have or anything? It is more regional for now, at least, and that's something that could change in the future. And obviously, Australia and New Zealand being more westernized, or say, but you could say that about India, right?
Mhm.
And everything from, but there you also have sports, how IPL and the final have just concluded by this airs. Um,
We'll get to sports in a second, but I do wanna point out, it was probably a year ago when I had Matthew Burke filling in for you on this
yeah,
podcast 1 month, and we actually had a discussion about my personal theory, which is about 20 years from now, you're gonna see a big boost in US to Australia travel, and the reason for that is Bluey. Like, 100%, all these
yeah, yeah,
kids who
yeah, yeah. I
grew up on
remember that
Bluey.
conversation. Right,
So,
blue. I think Bluey and footy. All right, so AFL. But I think India. So you're not going into sports, but it's just that attracts a lot of people.
it
Yes.
does, it for sure
And
does.
Bollywood, obviously, with the diaspora around the world. So India is also part of that, bringing culture around, which drives travel, which changes how investors look at what kind of hotels they will build. Because obviously the luxury and higher end hotels offering in India has changed so much, just like it does in Indonesia. It's no longer the traditional stuff, and China is seeing that as well, right? Remember, China has increased so much in the arrivals from a low base, right? But it is changing also how the payments, and who wants to have hotels and brands in there as well. And it's moving. And I mean, speaking of China, what we said last week, Hong Kong, Hong Kong keeps being hot. People talk a lot about Hong Kong. People like Hong Kong. The occupancy growth is now low because it's high, but it's all that rate is growing.
I mean,
Obviously, you don't have massive supply growth.
it wasn't that long where we were talking about, is Hong Kong gonna come back to what it was, right? So, it's
Yeah,
noteworthy that
it's definitely moving in that direction, and I think what one of the strong indicators is that when you say that, oh yeah, no, it's moving in the right direction, but when everyone is also more interested in terms of investment, right? So and it's across all asset classes. But you're now seeing some really strong growth. We're every month over 25, over 24, starting to add up. So I won't be surprised at all if it eventually gets up there and reaches towards the traditional 2017, 18 heights. Because it's definitely people are going back saying, you know what, this is a good market, and we'll find that place with Shenzhen and in the global spot as well. So Hong Kong's pretty hot from an interest.
So stateside, the week this publishes will be the same week as I guess what is now called the NYU International Hospitality Investment Forum, formerly just the NYU Hospitality Conference, which is one of the points in the year where our colleagues at STR update the full
Mhm.
year forecast. Obviously, there's a component to that to your part of the world. Anything interesting on the forecast front?
Yes, but when we've talked about forecast, when this releases, and we've worked hard during May to see how this changes, because so many markets here are indirectly impacted by this recent shock to the system. So it definitely, back to your point about question of time. And if you both look at the forward-looking data, you can see that the markets that we already talked about today, it's evident that they will see a softer thing compared to last year, like Osaka.
Mhm.
That will continue, all right? And those
Yeah.
parts there. Otherwise, a year out, half year out, 90 days out, just from an occupancy standpoint on the books, pretty similar to last year, low and slow, 1-2% up. And that makes sense when you look at the revised forecast that we have, because there are very few updates. Maldives is one thing, right? But in terms, even India with its strong domestic, and all those markets with strong domestic markets, it doesn't matter if it's if this is a quarterly scenario, and even if it rolls into Q3, obviously the longer it goes, the worse it is, yes. But if it can be contained within those 3-4 months, then yeah, we won't see a massive impact. The small, like we say, Jakarta will see, yeah, Q2 is softer a little bit on a couple of markets, because how people fly, the Australians up there, and changes the narrative with like airline fuel, and changes the flight pricing. But you can change where you want to stay. And Singapore, same thing, slight ADR softer, but we still hold up most of these markets for Q4. Most of the hoteliers and investors are interested on the annual basis, right? And I think for the full year of 26, we're still saying on most of these markets, Q4, if it all ends sometime soon, Q4 will correct and adjust for any softness in one direction in Q2 that is quite small. So we still hold firm very close to a lot of the February forecast that we had in a lot of
Mhm.
these points, actually.
Mhm. All right. Well, with all of the serious talk out of the way, let's talk sports. And you were actually mentioning too that your most interesting sports news of the month is contract related. So apparently, very young people getting paid a lot of money in India.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good point. This whole thing about the cricket and IPL, right? It's a short season, it's intense, and it's a lot of sixes, as they say in cricket, right? Home runs, if you will, to translate it. But Mumbai Indians, one of the IP teams, they offered this 15-year-old kid. Um, his name is Vaibhav. 30 crore. And how many lakhs in a crore? I know you're good with Indian numbers, Sean, but it's about 3 million. So you
You
got
know
3
what?
million.
I used to actually, we have a Indian freelancer, who
That's
is
right.
amazing, and she will, I'll occasionally have to edit that copy, and that fact checking Indian currency numbers it breaks my brain.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, and you know what breaks it? When a Westerner realizes that they put the comma after 2 zeros and not
Yes,
3.
yes.
Yeah, that breaks your brain. Welcome to India. But it's
But you
so
were
they give her like 3
translating,
million
yes.
bucks. Yeah, 3 million bucks, and then a flat in Antigua and a private island in the Maldives,
Which
blank
is
check
just
to
so
his parents.
crazy to me.
So this is, yeah, so this is he. I think I'm right in saying 53 sixes he did. Like, he broke the record. So he keeps breaking records, this kid. So my first view is, of course, he should go and play for my Rockies, because now we need more pitching, but we would like. So I think the Colorado Rockies should offer him a position as well and outbid Ambani, which is probably impossible because he
Yeah.
is one of the richest men in the world. So I think, yeah, that's been. But I'll tell you what, the last week, I don't know about you, but it's been a crazy couple of weeks here. Avs being dunked out by Vegas. My beloved Middlesbrough losing a championship playoff final after cheating Southampton in Spygate, gone out. Swans who lost the game. How about that?
I know. I mean, it was to a good team, so he can't get too upset.
No.
But and I don't want to jinx it, because by the time this publishes, there will be another Sydney Swans games played. But I mean, the second team on the table is the Swans will be playing the last place Tigers. So
Yeah.
in all likelihood, I mean, they're resting about half of of the lineup in that game. Like, it's. I don't think the outcome is in too much question, but let's knock on wood there.
Listen, the top 5-6 teams there now up on the ladder are good. Like, Frio's great, Hawks are
No,
good.
that's my only qualm about no longer being in first place in the AFL, is that within the Cleveland STR office, we have all adopted teams in the AFL, and Dan Kubaki's Fremantle Dockers have unseated us. So I've heard about it. I've heard about it from Dan.
But didn't you also say that if you win the President's Cup, you don't win the Stanley Cup? So
That's exactly it. And when the last time the Swans won the minor premiership, what happened? We
yeah, there you
we
go.
flamed out in the grand final. So,
Perfect to be second, third there and go in and get it for
but to
sure.
clarify, because I said this pre-recording, for those who don't follow NHL, I'll have to fact check myself on this, but I believe it's 2013, the last time a team in the NHL that won the President's Cup, which is what you get for, being the best team during the regular season. 2013 is the last time a team that won the President's Cup won the Stanley Cup, which is a wild stretch, because theoretically, if you have the most points during the regular season, you should be the best
No,
team
but you
in the
were best
NHL.
when it didn't matter. I think that's a
That's
great
it. I mean,
American way. Like, you got to be best when it matters, which is Sweden just took that same approach in the Ice Hockey World Championships and played, not so great, and like, we'll get there in playoffs. No, got dunked out against Switzerland, and off we go. And Norway's in the semifinal, which I wonder, is that an omen for the World Cup in football coming up? I did months ago, before Sweden qualified, I said Norway's going to win the World Cup. So I don't
Well,
know.
that would be something. That would be
Yeah.
something. I mean, speaking of ice hockey, you were talking about your Avalanche going out. Obviously, my Buffalo Sabres are also out. I feel like I should, I've joked about this a number of times. I should invite Luc Etienne, Rillard Lafond, who is on the
That's right.
Paris team, is a big Canadiens fan. His Canadiens triumphed over my Sabres in a 7-game series, won in overtime in Game 7, in a game that the Canadiens thoroughly got outplayed, but it doesn't matter. If you score more goals, you win. It was a bummer. It was a bummer. Luke would be a fun addition to this conversation, because he also very closely follows sumo, and he's been sending me, well, last week he was sending me daily updates from the May tournament for Grand Sumo, so he actually has a lot of Asia Pacific sporting knowledge.
Very good. Well, the Canadians are still in it, I believe.
I mean, only on paper. By the time, I will go on the record to say this, and there's nothing against Luke and his Canadians, because of the teams left in the field, they're the most
It'll
fun
be
to
the
root for.
Hurricanes. Yeah, I agree.
They will be out of the tournament by the time this publishes.
How about that?
because-
Carolina, Vegas in the final. Wow. All right.
If that comes back to bite me, I won't be upset about it, because I would love to see the Canadians move on. Like I said, they're a very fun young team, but they've also been playing their top line like NBA style minutes over like 3 really grueling playoff series. Like, if they managed to win that series, would have to have gone 7 games too. And
Yeah.
here's the thing: I'm going on a tirade about this, but they got outplayed in the
I
first
think
round
you
by
are.
the Lightning.
This is very emotional.
So they got outplayed in the first round by the Lightning. They got outplayed on the whole in the second round by the Sabres. And I have a hard time seeing them turning it around to the point where you wouldn't say that they got outplayed by the Hurricanes in the Eastern Conference Finals. So it would be a historically lucky run if they made it to the Stanley Cup final. Anyway,
I
that's my last.
No, I agree with that. That's fair. And as you can tell, at this time of year, this May, June, there's a lot of sports going on, and I
There
look
is.
forward.
This is like so plentiful.
And we'll talk about World Cup next month as well, and see how that starts to pan out. And
I take pride in this being the only hotels podcast that isn't talking about the World Cup right now.
that's right. That's right. And
There's so much.
we will make sure we talk about will co-living continue to rise in the hospitality segment in Southeast Asia. But that's for another day, Sean.
That's for another day.
We reached
All
our curve.
right. Jesper, I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you not getting struck by lightning moments before we hit the record button. Let's hope that remains the case for the month that follows.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
I'm Terence Baker, News Editor, Europe, Middle East and Africa, and I'm the host of The Upgrade, a CoStar News Hotels podcast for the EMEA region. In it, I discuss with special guests the pressures, challenges, joys and exhilaration that comes with managing, owning and developing hotels in our glorious multifaceted industry. Discovering the EMEA region from the scenic northern shores of Norway to heights of Table Mountain in South Africa, and most likely some chat about birdwatching, distance running and the English Premiership. Join us wherever you find your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify and on other platforms.
This episode of the CoStar News Hotels podcast was recorded on May 28th, 2026 and edited by Sean McCracken. Visit costar.com/hotel news for more coverage. Find all of our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or your platform of choice.